Welcome to the HCI family of podcasts. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We share our own original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. Join us for practitioner-oriented content around all things leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with the HCI family of podcasts. Keith Goode, welcome to the conversation today.
Hey, John, it's great to be here.
It is a pleasure to be with you. You're joining us from the East Coast, Chesapeake Bay area. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking about how leaders can leverage people and HR data more effectively. You know, this is something I think a lot about. I often talk with my students about at the university, as well as with organizations I do consulting with. You know, organizations have so much data. We're in the age of big data. And I think often they don't really know what to do with it. They don't know how to manage it. If they have great data, they're not sure how to analyze it or how to interpret it or how to really leverage it. And when it comes there, and that's of data of all sorts, right? You have performance data, you have customer data, you have all sorts of data, logistics data, whatever. When it comes to people data, people within your organization, you know, we have all sorts of things that we can do from a human capital strategy perspective, yet we're not usually tapping into it because we just simply don't even really understand or know how to leverage the information that we already have, or we're not collecting the right data in the first place to be able to answer the types of questions we need to answer so that we can move in the right direction. So these are the types of things we're going to be unpacking and exploring together today. As we get started, I wanted to share Keith's bio with everybody. Keith Goode is Vice President of Products and Services at Zeroed In Technologies Workforce Intelligence. The digital world is growing exponentially, but how is all of this data impacting an organization's most valued asset, their people? Keith believes this is an area of immense opportunity, and it is the primary reason he joined Zero In Technologies. Their goal is to transform HR, talent, and business data into actionable workforce intelligence used to make better, faster, and more informed decisions. And I think that is so vital, so important. I'm thrilled to sit down with you and have this opportunity to chat. Keith, anything else you would like to highlight by way of your background, your personal context, or that of your company before we dive on into the conversation?
Yeah, definitely. So our company is really established because where we started from, we understood in the HR space that HR systems are very siloed. And if you go out there, if you have payroll system, an HRS system, an analytics or a talent acquisition system, they're all separated and they're all going to say they do analytics, but it's bringing that data together to really make change and help make better decisions about the people where we feel the opportunity is. And so that being said, I kind of think that the state of HR analytics today, it kind of reminds me of high school sex. Everybody talks about it. No one really knows how to do it. Everyone thinks everyone else is doing it, so they claim to be doing it as well. So that's kind of where I see things are today. And, but there's great opportunity. And, I'm hoping that we can delve into this in more detail.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting analogy. I'm not sure I've ever quite heard that one shared, but I think it's apt. Uh, so thank you for expanding my way of thinking about this issue. But absolutely, I think that's definitely true. And it's something we talk about all the time. Everyone knows, you know, we talk about digital transformation. We talk about analytics. We talk about disruptive technologies. We talk about all these things and we talk about them all the time. So I think it's on everyone's mind, yet getting beyond the buzzwords and getting down to the nitty gritty of like what it actually means, how to actually implement, what to actually do with it. That's where it gets more complicated. And that's where I think a lot of people don't really know quite what to do beyond the buzzwords, right?
Yeah. Yeah. If you think about it from an HR standpoint, there's kind of really three options. It's one, hey, I'm going to hire technologists, I'm going to hire programmers, I'm going to hire analysts, and we're going to build this from the ground up, maybe using Tableau, Power BI. I'll have to get ETL people, I'll have to clean the data. From an HR perspective, that's a little bit outside their wheelhouse and pretty costly. The other avenue that they could go with is a vendor approach where they say, hey, put your data in this format and we'll give you these 5,000 metrics. Great, but they still have to do the data cleaning. And are those 5,000 metrics important to me, my unique business? And then there's that intermediate area that, you know, can support and work with the client, the HR organization as a partner to help clean and cleanse and get that data organized, and also take a templated approach, a approach of configuration to make sure that the metrics and the analytics are what's important to the organization. And that's where I think zeroed in falls in. We're not a black box where, give us X and we'll give you Y. And we're not a do everything from scratch yourself. We're kind of in the middle of that.
Yeah, yeah, excellent. Well, so let's talk about, what leaders can do. So people listening, I think everyone's shaking their head. Yeah, we need to do more with data. We need to figure out what to do with the data we have. We need to figure out how to be more proactive about collecting the right kind of data, having the right metrics, et cetera, using what we have to tell the right stories, to drive the right types of improvements, the right solutions, whatever. But where do we start? Like what do leaders do who want to begin leveraging people in HR data more effectively? Where can they begin today?
Well, I think you get into the weeds a little bit. You realize that from a reporting standpoint, there's that, look at it as a pyramid perspective. And that bottom end of the pyramid, it's just basic reporting. It's, head counting, it's
Yeah.
turnover, it's that basic stuff. And you want to make sure you get that right. And try to, push it off and make sure that that's first taken care of. Second is then work with your business to find out, okay, well, what are those measurements that can really make a difference, that's going to change the needle on certain things? And it does often require, working with those business groups to see, for example, how is turnover impacting our call center? How is our acquisitions impacting, you know our time to market? Are we able to get people in quick enough to get our products out fast enough? So it's working with those businesses to find out, how they can leverage the HR metrics and correlate them to other business drivers. And that's, get the house cleaning up first. That's second.
So where to begin? Start simple. I think a lot of times we get overwhelmed, right? Because we think of the complexity, we think of the hugeness of it. Again, we're in the age of big data. And so we think of like all of the stuff that's possible. We think of all the stuff we probably should be doing that we haven't been doing. And then we start to just get overwhelmed. And then we just start, and then we just do nothing, right?
Yeah.
We just continue with nothing. And nothing is not helpful. So
Yeah.
start simple, start basic. If that just means basic counts, basic kind of, I think of it as more vanity metrics, like that kind of stuff. It's not going to be as impactful, but it's a place to start. It's a place to begin, where you can start to get a little bit more comfortable and get your people more comfortable with just dealing with data, dealing with metrics, understanding what it means, starting to feel accountable to data and to outcomes, right? And then you can start to go from there. And then you can start to go towards things that derive more impact, beyond these vanity metrics, right?
That's true, John. And I also wanted to say there's another aspect of it. It's you establish a level of trust getting those metrics out first and
Yeah.
getting, publicized. Then you get that pulling effect. Instead of trying to push things out, they're asking for more. Your
Mm,
constituents are now, this is great. Thank you for providing that. Can you do this? And now
mhm.
you're heading in the right direction.
I like that. Yeah. If you can, that's a win, isn't it? If you can get to the
Hmm.
point where people aren't feeling pressed upon to like do more, but they're actually coming to you asking for more, that is awesome.
Yeah,
That's changing the culture. That's changing the mindset. And that's a huge win for your organization if you can start to get there, right? So,
definitely.
so absolutely, starting simple sometimes seems silly. Sometimes it seems like, well, these things don't matter. Like if we're starting simple, we're doing stuff that doesn't matter, but it does matter because you're building a culture, you're building a mindset, that then can build momentum, into more complexity, into more meaningful, substantial types of analyses that will drive even better data-driven, data-informed decision making in the future.
That's right. Like when you build a house, you start with the foundation. If you got a solid foundation, you're going to build a nice house on top of it. If the foundation isn't solid, yikes.
Yeah, yeah. So we start there. Can you walk us through now? We start kind of basic. What's kind of your high level process for leaders as they're starting to use, HR and people data more effectively? Walk us through what that process looks like.
Yeah, it's a lot like we've been talking about. So the first things that we work on is identifying where does the data exist. And
Hmm.
it's not just currently, and we're talking about silos, it's talent acquisition, it's pay, it's HRS,
Yeah,
it's learning, it's skills, but it's also those historical systems. We all see HR organizations, hey, let's move to this new HRS system. Hey, let's move to this new talent management system. Let's move to this new learning management system, right? Well, what happens to all that historical data?
yeah,
Sometimes it goes forward, sometimes it doesn't. So we work with them to identify where all the skeletons are laid, where all the data might be. And then we work on getting that into a central data lake, if you will. From there, we're able to cleanse things, we're able to join things that otherwise wouldn't be because they're in their own different silos. And then from there, we work with our clients to identify, okay, well, how do we present this? And what are the rules to, for presenting this data to finance? How does it need to be positioned? How does it need to be filtered? If we're taking that same information and we want to present it to the sales organization, how do we need to do that? And a lot of times what we found out, John, is that it's the same presentation, it's the same data, it just needs to be filtered, sorted, or organized a little bit different, but we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time we do that. And that's important because now we have a single point of truth. Whether it's going to finance, whether it's going to sales, whether it's staying internally, we have a common method for determining a metric, and how we present that is always going to be the same. May not be the same value, but the
mm,
logic to derive that is going to be the same. And that's really important. And then I think second, as we get that level of trust, we often work with our clients to find out, and their business partners to find out, okay, what more can we do? How can we correlate, turnover and our
hmm.
candidate pipeline to our call center volumes or our productivity numbers going out the door? How can we do that? And that often means getting additional data into the system, whether it's say from your call center or from your manufacturing group or your sales numbers, or sometimes externally. We've worked with organizations, say in the medical space, and we've had the HR data, the learning data, and then we can bring in, HR is great. Medical is great because you've got CMS that has
Right.
publicly a lot of data on hospitals, on providers. They've got their star rating. They've got surveys that they do on patient readmittance rates and satisfactions. So we can pull that data and correlate that with, well, how is the certification training impacting readmittance rates or death rates or things of that nature, or satisfaction rates from patients. And then the organizations can make sure that, say, their training is aligned accordingly.
Yeah, well, that's really cool. So you start to pull in other relevant stuff. You can start to do more causal stuff, right?
Yes.
So not just correlation, but you can actually do more causation. You can run models and regressions and other, more sophisticated statistics and such to really try to drive at business results that
Yeah.
I think is going to matter for everyone. So really bottom line types of outcomes that everyone's really going to care about. So again, we if we start back all the way at the beginning, we talk about like the very basic stuff. Start somewhere, start basic. You're starting with simple counts, vanity metrics, basic descriptive statistics, like basic stuff. That it does have value. It matters because it builds the culture, it builds the mindset, and people start to ask for it. They start to pull it instead of pushing. It's a pull kind of culture. All of that's really important. One of the reasons why it's so important is because it builds to what you were just describing.
Yeah.
Ideally, we get to a place where we're actually moving towards predictability. We're moving to a place where we can drive business outcomes, where we can, we don't have a crystal ball. We can never fully predict, but within statistical probability and reasonable significance, like we can have a reasonable understanding of like what will happen given large data sets that can show us what has happened in the past, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's the value of it, especially when you're talking about things like medical data, population data. Like we have massive amounts. I think of my brother-in-law who is an actuary. He deals with health insurance data and medical data all day long. And so like I'm a social scientist. I'm a professor. I deal with organizational data and social science data. I'm talking about like sampling data, right? So if I have a really great data set, I might have tens of thousands of data points, right? My brother-in-law is an actuary. He has like millions and
Yeah,
millions of data points.
right,
Um, and that's actually what organizations usually have. They usually have
right.
millions and millions of data points.
Hmm.
When you get to that point, you're not just sampling, you're like talking about whole populations. And what you can actually do in terms of predictability is incredible if you know how to do it.
Yeah,
And if you're willing to put in the time and the effort. And so not a granted, not everyone has the expertise. Not everyone has people on the payroll that can do that for you. And that's why organizations exist that can help you
yeah,
to do that. You don't
yep,
necessarily need someone internally to do all of that. Sometimes it doesn't make sense to have an internal team to do that. Sometimes you don't have an actuarial department. Sometimes you don't have a business a set of business analysts or people that do that internally. And sometimes you outsource that. Sometimes you have a team that can come in and help you with that.
yeah,
So, all of that, will lead to then ultimately, I guess the last thing I want to talk about is how do you tell stories with the data? Because it's great to have data. It's great to have quantitative information. It's great to have, um, high significance, predictability. All of that's wonderful, but you do have to be able to translate it, especially for those who perhaps don't have quantitative chops, who may not be able to look at a statistical output and be able to interpret it and understand it. Like, how do you take, this people in HR data and translate it into great stories and use cases so that you can really drive impact um, in the organization through influence with senior executives, with your people, your teams, things like that.
yeah. And I'll start by saying, from a timeline perspective, you know, just for example, putting together, say two graphs, one head count, the other productivity information, right? Or, we have had a client that, had a lot of people working outside. So we put together, productivity and weather and training data together, right? Just very very simple. Hey, this is the training that we've done. This is the weather that was done that happened over the last month on each day, and this is a productivity. And just by showing that, our minds are as humans, we're very inquisitive. We're able to ask questions. We're able to think about things. And just starting by putting three things out there, two or three things out there, and letting your constituents, your clients, your organization start asking questions about that. And again, that kind of gets to that pull effect. So then, that's kind of the approach to then start telling stories. Is it's collaboration. It's getting feedback from multiple people and telling those stories. But that's kind of where things have been and where they are today. But where are they going? So let's introduce large language models and AI.
Hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, everybody's familiar with the chat GPTs. Right now, models understand language. They understand pictures and they understand sound as well. But let's focus on language. So a lot of organizations and a lot of systems out there are taking their analytics. And so analytics, think of it as two elements. You've got the actual data elements. You take your data, you run it through analytics, and this is your output, your information about your people, right? And you've got what we call metadata. It's
Hmm.
information about that data. So a lot of people have been taking the metadata and sending that across it and pushing that into an AI model. And you can do things like, hey, what was my headcount in organization ABC 2 months ago compared to 3 months ago, right? So it looks at the metadata, understands what you asked it, and it understands the metadata, and it will basically take you to a graph that exists in the system. It's saving you the clicks from having to do that, right? Which is great, and certainly has value. We've also taken that a step further, where now let's suppose you've got a graph that maybe it's a heat map, and it's showing your learning over certain, say, certifications and your output by department. So it's a pretty complex map. Instead of just taking the metadata, let's bring a large language model inside our ecosystem, inside our processing environment, so data doesn't leave. Let's train that model for our organization from an HR perspective. Let's add prompts to it. So let's take that data that's populating that graph. Let's add some prompts like, hey, what's the highs? What's the mins? What should I know about? And
Mm,
provide some actions based off this data, right? Well, now you've got an AI model that understands language. It understands the language of the data that's being sent to it, and it can respond in a paragraph format. Hey, this is what the graph is telling you. You might want to consider these actions, all generated through AI. And that is extremely powerful, because you've probably seen how many times you've seen someone look at a graph and say, yeah, that's a great chart. That's a great dashboard. That's beautiful. Do they ever come back and use it? Because probably not. And so this kind of gives those people something to read and understand, a model that's looking at that data and providing some insights into it automatically. So that's, I think, where an option is. And then thirdly, I think where things are going is more across, I'll call it that data fabric, the whole,
mm,
all the data that's coming in there. And I think that's going to start changing how we're working with our clients. For example, let's look at those processes that we do every time we get a new client. We don't ask our clients, say, put your data in this format and we'll give you this. What we'd like to do is meet our clients where their data is currently, right?
mhm.
And so let's pull that in, let's understand it, let's describe it, and then let's use AI to say, okay, well, zeroed in, we typically work with workforce analytics. So let's look across all this data fabric, let's look at things and how we're going to piece it together to what we normally do. What are the normal organizational demographics? What are the normal people attributes? What are the normal, how do we come up with an effective dated employee record across this data? And it can write code, it can generate categories, even getting to models that we can build from. So that's going to save not only a lot of time, but it gives us a higher level of scale, and helps people as they come on board.
Yeah, which I mean, that's kind of crazy to think about, right? Like how much things have developed and changed so quickly, so fast, just in the last year, two
Yeah,
years. Um, it truly is incredible. It democratizes analysis, right? Data accessibility and analysis, and now it's just so much more accessible
yeah,
to everybody, and you can upload a complex report, a complex document into an AI, chat GPT or whatever large language model, and get so much assistance in an interpretation of those materials, which is so helpful. So again,
that's right.
not to say that we don't still need humans to help with all this, because we do, and you still need to fact check the AI and
Yes,
all that kind of stuff, because there's still hallucinations and all that kind of stuff we're still working out.
yes,
But it really is really great. It's great. It's helpful. It's a huge leap forward. And yeah, I mean, we've just come so far, and it's amazing to think about how much farther we may come, or we may go just in the
yeah.
next, year, the next 5 years. It's
I mean
it's it's
that
incredible.
that's progress. That's progress, and
That's progress.
let's not run away from it. Let's embrace it and see where it takes us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Keith, this has just been a fascinating conversation. I note the time. I need to let you go and get on with your busy day. But before we wrap things up, I wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, your team, and then give us the final word on the topic for today.
Yeah, absolutely. So if anyone would love to carry on this conversation in more detail, always open for that. And our organization is too. So we're you can find us on the web, zeroedin.com. If you are on LinkedIn and want to contact me and further discuss this, my handle is Keith A. Goode on LinkedIn. Again, would love to continue the conversation.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Keith. Again, it's been a pleasure. I
Thanks,
encourage the
sir.
audience to reach out, to get connected, find out more about what Keith can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the podcast. We hope you stay healthy and safe, and please join us again soon.